Hello and welcome to the 42 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Podcast. Gosh, I'm so pumped that I remembered my line. It's been a minute. Tonight's podcast, first of all, I'm your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Tonight, brought to us by our good friends at S2 Cognition. S2 Cognition delivers a revolutionary approach to helping athletes understand how in-game decisions impact their performance from youth levels all the way to the pros. I want to also say thanks to our good friends at Pitch Logic, the system used by players, coaches, scouts, and instructors at all levels of play. From youth leagues to the big leagues, it's easy to use and affordable technology, makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics and features used at the highest level of our sport. pitchlogic.com for more information. As always, but it's been a minute, I'm joined by the man named Sauce, Joe Healy, Aaron J. Fitt, Kendall Bradley Rogers. Gentlemen, it has been too long. It's only been like 3 weeks, but I've missed you guys. How we been? Fitzy, good to have you back from Ireland.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. Great to be with you.
Yeah. What any
Fit's like Taylor Swift. He has like a world tour when the season's over.
Yeah, well, right. Certainly. You know, we can't take vacations from January through June, so we got to squeeze them in the summer before fall ball.
When you take vacations, you just go to Starkville and Oxford
that's true.
Columbia,
that's
South Carolina.
Yeah, but Ireland, Fitzy, for you and in Virginia like that, and I know Virginia didn't go on this was a golf trip, but like Ireland, that's like just playing catch.
Yeah,
like that's not even a full bullpen day for you guys. That's light work.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I've got a lot of leg work over there, Coach. Walk 10 rounds of golf in 6 days. We got our fill. Legs are feeling strong.
Very good. Very good. All right, boys, let's jump in because we have some ground to cover tonight. So we are going to focus on the coaching changes. I've always wanted to do this podcast, but we never get to it. You know, we're averaging about 40 coaching changes in Division I baseball a year. So we want to cover those in one podcast because a lot of you guys are like us, the listeners, where it's like some of these you see Kendall's tweet about the coaching change, but then there's other stuff going on. We're right in the middle of the postseason. So this is a good chance to cap it. I've put the coaching changes into 4 categories. We're going to talk about the highest profile ones. We had some legacy coaches that have retired in the offseason. So we'll make that a category. There's some really, like I called the third category of interest. There's some ones that are, pretty fascinating to me. And then we'll call it the rest of the field where there's, with 40 changes, there's a lot there. So why don't we just go one, we can discuss as a group, but Fitzy, why don't you kick us off? Pick one of the high profile changes.
Gosh, this is a lot of responsibility. Batting leadoff here.
Need you on base.
Kid. Okay. Listen, I'm on you. Here's what I got. I was intrigued by Ohio State. You had this in that top tier. Bill Mosiello going back to TCU and Justin Hare coming in from Campbell. I mean, one of the more successful, mid-major coaches of the last decade. He won a lot over there at Campbell, and it's a much different profile school now. Going from a small private religious school in Bowie's Creek, North Carolina, to going to the Ohio State University, this giant public school in the Midwest. It's just such a dramatic departure from where he's been, and I'm fascinated to see how it goes. I mean, obviously he's a great baseball man. Was strongly in the mix, as we know, last year for the Georgia job. He's gotten looks before, I'm kind of excited to see his career go to the next level. I'm still a young guy with a lot of bright years ahead of him, and this one to me is pretty fascinating.
Do you guys know if Justin is an Ohio native? I believe he is. Does that ring a bell for anyone? You're muted, Kendall, if you're talking.
Yeah, I believe he's from Hamilton, Ohio.
Oh, they have that's like a little league juggernaut. I think that's near Cincinnati.
Look it up. I'm pretty sure he's from Hamilton, Ohio, but yeah, he's in Midwest.
That's correct. I Googled it. Yeah, Hamilton, Ohio.
That gives you an idea of how terribly much I look at the coaching carousel. I know where Justin Hare's hometown is.
Yeah, you live it, Kendall. I will just say, like, the Big Ten is going to be really important to college baseball. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, and a school like Ohio State, we need them to be really serious about baseball. And I'm optimistic. And they
have the right AD for it.
Yeah.
Ross Bjork, obviously being at Ole Miss and Texas A&M, loves college baseball. Now there's constraints when you have, 30-something, 31, 32 sports in the Big Ten. But, I would expect them to make much more of a commitment. And, if you can turn Campbell into a juggernaut, I think you can do the same at Ohio State, to say the least.
I think it says something about Ohio State's place too in the Big Ten and what people view Ohio State as. That Big Ten coaching hiring tends to be pretty parochial, the right word, like very like this very specific pipelines, right? Where I mean Dan Hartlow's been there forever, but he's like an Illinois guy. And, but these various Big Ten schools just have like they stick in their regions, and they typically bring on guys who are very familiar with that area, might have coached there in the past. And Ohio State's last two coaches have been Bill Mosiello and Justin Hare. And I think those are, whether those situations worked out or not, no matter what you think of them, like I do think it says something about how Ohio State is viewed and their ceiling is viewed in college baseball, and how Ohio State views itself versus some of the rest of the Big Ten.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And the other element to this hire and this kind of exchange here between, Mosiello leaving and Justin Hare going to Ohio State is the fact that in this coaching carousel, you had three guys leave head coaching jobs to become assistants at power schools. You had, Mosiello going back to TCU. You had Scott Jackson going back to North Carolina. I mean, frankly, that was one of those moves when somebody texted me about it, I was like, no way. Because Liberty's a really good mid-major job. So when he left to go back to North Carolina, I thought that was interesting. And of course, was it late last week? Clay Van Hook leaves UTA as a head coach to go to University of Houston as an assistant, which is interesting because he's going to a place where it's not like there's a ton of stability there. Like they've got a new AD coming in, they're in the Big 12, the bar has kind of been raised for that program. So there's a little bit of uncertainty at U of A. So Runes, I think it kind of gives you an idea of what a lot of these mid-major coaches are thinking, which is I might want to get to a bigger school.
Yeah. You gotta want. I think this is a little off topic, but I think it's for it too, Kendall, because J.K. right, he's another head coach.
Oh yeah,
that leaves.
How to forget about J.K.
Yeah,
J.K.
going to A&M. But I think you're painting with a broad brush here, which is always dangerous. But I think in this era we're entering, and maybe the one we've already been in, you got to just want the lifestyle of a mid-major coach. And maybe if you still feel like you have Omaha aspirations, then you do have to bolt for a big school because it feels like it's the pyramid's getting thinner and thinner. But the mid-major lifestyle could be awesome, right? Like there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of benefits to it, but of course there's going to be a lot of frustrations too. So, Joe, do you want to take another one of the high-profile ones?
I'd love to. First of all, I see here in the spreadsheet you created, Runes, that Jim Schlossnagle went to Texas, huh? I hadn't heard that.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
We talked a lot about that though, so I'm gonna move to someone else here. I also I'm holding myself back from starting off talking about Mitch Hannes by just saying, 56-year-old moves to Florida. I guess that's the headline there.
Profiling him, Joe. Look at you.
So I think it's a great. But I was actually going to talk about Paul Maneri at South Carolina. I mean, that's a hire that I think caught a lot of us off guard. Probably not so much Kendall because he lives in this world, but for the rest of us, it was like, oh, okay.
Actually, it was a huge surprise.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go.
And actually, this may sound really bad, but the first time I had somebody mention, "Hey, you might want to dig on Paul Maneri," I was like, "Yeah, there's no way they're hiring Paul Maneri." And a week later, they hired Paul Maneri. So I'm glad to see him back. But I was very surprised by that. Yeah,
certainly he's one of the guys you just kind of enjoy seeing around college baseball. Certainly, and the thing about it is I understand. For me, what I find interesting about this is I understand why if you're a South Carolina fan that was maybe looking for the new hot head coach, I get it, and I understand why there's some concerns about Paul Maneri because college baseball has changed a lot just in the few years that he's been gone. But I feel like maybe we've gone a little bit too far in the direction that maybe Paul Maneri, national title winning head coach, that was a long time ago. Sure. I get it. But this is not a guy who's going to forget how to coach a baseball team. Right. So I just feel like maybe we've gotten a little bit, I'm not speaking for anyone in this recording necessarily, but the perception of what he brings to the table, I think, has gone too far in the direction of he's some sort of doddering old man, right? I don't think that's the case. We're probably not giving him enough credit for what he is and who he is as a head coach. Is it going to work? I don't know. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to work, but let's not act like this isn't an extremely accomplished head coach who has a chance to actually succeed at South Carolina.
Yep. Joe, can you spell the word doddering for me, please?
Yeah, I think it's Doddering.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
That
Nailed
and
it.
parochial.
Nailed
Yeah.
it.
That
Yeah.
is
Joe,
not how I would have
just
spelled it.
bring it, spit and smoke.
Joe's
there.
off to a hot start here. I don't think I'm going
Thank
to
you.
catch him tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say this about Palmineri. I think he's a very underrated coach, to your point, Joe. Like, took Notre Dame to Omaha in 2000, going through Tallahassee in the heyday in 2002. That's back when Florida State was winning, it felt like 55 games. You could just like write it in pen. And they go through there. Brian O'Connor's his assistant coach, and even the LSU thing, 6 straight years they're a top 8 national seed. That's outrageous. Like, that's just like, you're not tripping up in the regular season at all for 6 years. But the LSU fan base, those are very high standards. And I was like you, Kendall, like when I saw that, I was like, I'm sorry, what? Because mostly you're just thinking about Paul's health and, but man, the more you think about it, it's like, hired a nice staff, and he's excellent with the media, and that's a really important part of that job. He's not going to look uncomfortable in the dugout. He's like, no offense, South Carolina, but the pressure he felt at LSU
is nothing.
Yeah, like South Carolina can't, it's comparable at best, if not a tick below. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think he checks a lot of boxes of what they kind of need. They need somebody who their fan base, when they have a tendency to be a little aggressive sometimes. Like, Paul's one of those people that's just going to kind of roll off his back, right? So they kind of need that. The problem I see with Paul or whomever they would have hired at South Carolina is the SEC East is a really tough division. The SEC in general is a really tough league. And so if South Carolina, and we have this discussion every year about various teams, if South Carolina is going to take a big step forward over the next couple of years, like, who takes a step back? Georgia had another really good transfer portal class. I mean, Tennessee is going to be a perennial national top 10, top 15 team every single year now. Florida, Vandy. I mean, the list kind of goes on. So the question for me is, like, he could do a pretty good job there, and the results may not look that much different than Mark Kingston.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
I mean, Mark Kingston got to what, 2 supers?
The very first year, right? I think year
one.
They
played Florida and they played Arkansas in supers, so 2 supers.
Yep. Yeah, and like the 2023 team, that felt like a special team until they, when they hosted LSU that 2-game weekend, that felt like the series of the year at that point in time, and then you just didn't stay healthy.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, they beat Skeens, right? Well, they didn't beat Skeens. Skeens went out of the game, and they won against the reliever, right?
Yeah, as a weather, I was at that game. I don't remember exactly what happened, but yeah, they were at that time. They seemed like, they might have been the best team in the country in mid-April, and it just, but hey, they still hosted regional that year. I mean, they hosted a couple of regionals that they didn't win, but I mean, it's not like that was a disastrous tenure by any means. And I think, speaking of Mark Kingston, I think Creighton did really well. To bring him in to succeed at Service. I mean, I think that's a wonderful fit out there. And we can talk more about that or not, but it's not my turn to nominate here.
Kendall, stay in the high profile section. What, any of those hires that you want to talk about? I'll list out the ones.
I actually want to talk about a 56-year-old that went to Florida. Thank you very much.
All right.
South Florida had success. Speaking of Mark Kingston, they had success with Mark Kingston when they plucked him away from Illinois State. They basically went the same exact route. They went to Indiana State, grabbed Mitch Hannes, who from Cambridge, Ohio, played baseball at Indiana State, was at Lincoln Trail. Indiana State has never been south of that area. It was a really interesting, very surprising hire. Once again, probably even more so than Paul. When I heard that this was going down, I was kind of like, whoa, that's out of nowhere. But this guy's an awesome coach. I mean, you talk about a guy who, was at 4 regionals out of the last 5 full seasons. Out of those, 1 super regional appearance. They won 45 and 44 games the last 2 years. So what he did at Indiana State was incredible, to say the least. To be able to host in Terre Haute is really impressive. Now, can he go to the state of Florida where he's going against Sully, Lean Jarrett, JD down at Miami? He's going against Rich Wallace at UCF. Can he take that formula that he had at Indiana State and emulate that at South Florida? That'll be really intriguing. The thing I really like about the Mitch Hannes hire is when you look at Diaz and Urdaneta and guys like that, I mean, he has a lot of success in some of these areas of Florida in the past, also in Puerto Rico. So if he can continue tapping into some of those sources, for recruits and players, this could be a really, really cool hire.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, obviously, it was an interesting fit that I didn't necessarily see coming, but a proven winner and again a great baseball man. It's almost like Justin Hare a little bit, where it's like it's a much different profile job, but I feel like that guy, his skill set will translate anywhere. Just a great ball coach, right? But here's the thing that I keep coming back to is, we talk about UCF, we talk about USF as these kind of, I wouldn't call them sleeping giants, but as these jobs where it feels like you could win more consistently maybe than they have over the years, right? Over the course of the history of those programs, when you just think about the talent. And it's like, yeah, you're competing against Florida State, Miami, but I mean, like, why can't, given the talent in that state, why can't those mid-majors be comparable to like the state of North Carolina mid-majors, where you've got an East Carolina or a Wilmington, or whoever else, a Charlotte? I mean, there's a lot of really good mid-majors that contend regularly in the state of North Carolina. There's a lot more schools in North Carolina, but like there's better talent in the state of Florida. I mean, why can't UCF and USF keep on winning at that kind of Wilmington ECU type level? Even though they have to, they're not going to beat out Florida and Florida State for players, sure, but like you can still win a lot there. And it's just, and Kingston showed you can win some, and UCF has had flashes, but like those two jobs, and Gulf Coast has won some too. I mean, there've been some other programs there. Yeah, Stetson for sure. Yeah, hosted, and I mean, so there's opportunity there, and I think it's a neat hire and a guy that can do a lot of winning down there.
Yep, I would say too, if those roster limits come to pass, in theory, it would seem that those Florida schools could do really well. Like that where you don't have bloated, SEC and ACC rosters from that perspective in the fall. Joe, wasn't Mitch Hanna's a president of a school? Wasn't he actually the president of Lincoln Trail?
That is correct. He was the president of Lincoln Trail.
Isn't that cool?
Late in his baseball tenure there. Yeah.
Come on, Kendall, know your beat, man.
Like it's funny, like coaches, you always hear the story at like the mid-major JUCO level. I mean, Runes, this from having coached JUCO, like, coaches always talk about, at that level, you're dragging the field yourself, you're handing out the meal money. Mitch Hanna's just one-upped them all. He's like, oh yeah, I was the president of the school. Like,
that's unbelievable. I've never heard of such a thing. That's incredible.
Yeah, the things you do as a JUCO coach. We would work concessions, the Phoenix College Bears. We work concessions at Arizona State football games. Like they'd get tips. That's how we paid for uniforms and stuff like that. And I remember, like after 6 Saturdays of that, you're there till God knows what hour. It's a bazillion degrees. I'm walking to my car. We've dismissed the team, an hour ago. I'm settling up with the vendor. I'm walking to my car and there's people tailgating in one of those big, parking garages. And I walk up to some random people tailgating. I'm like, do you have a cold beer, please? Like, can I just, you don't know me from Adam, but I could use a cold adult beverage in the worst way. Oh, gosh.
I thought you guys just did no-show jobs down there.
Is that
too soon?
No, that's the D1s. That's the big dogs.
Oh, you're right.
That's part of the that's the Mike Leake internship program.
Phoenix College Bears. Yes. So, all right.
Man, Fitt with a little bit of a low blow there.
Yeah. We should not relitigate that case. I've got my facts ready.
His attorneys have advised him to say
nothing. That's right. Statute of limitations is expired. I have been exonerated.
Withdrawn.
Yes, withdrawn. Thank you. So the rest of the high profile category, we had obviously Jim Schlossnagle going to Texas, Michael Early going to A&M. Kendall mentioned Jason Kelly was a big part of that. Eddie Smith going to Washington, I think is just an awesome hire. He was incredible at Utah Valley. He's connected to Paul Maneri and Brian O'Connor. He worked at LSU and Tulane and UVA and Notre Dame. And again, he's a Pacific Northwest guy. I just think Eddie Smith is very, very bright. Fitzy, I think you mentioned Mark Kingston to Creighton. When that'll be after next year. Ed Service has one more year and then he'll retire. I think that's a really cool one. Yeah, Scott Jackson, when he went back to North Carolina, Bradley LaCroix takes over at Liberty. He's going to come from VCU, who was in the NCAA tournament. I thought another really cool one was that TJ Bruce was hired as the head coach of Long Beach State.
Yeah.
He played there, he coached there, he's got a national championship ring at UCLA. I just think it's going to be an interesting time for the Big West. I'm pretty encouraged, and I think TJ Bruce really spices that up. You guys mentioned Justin Hare going to Ohio State, Mitch Hanna's South Florida, Paul Maneri to South Carolina. I'll read off the legacy coaches, and you guys can jump in Fitzy, you can start us if you see one you like. Ty McDevitt is going to take over for John Anderson at Minnesota. Kevin Schnall is going to take over for Gary Gilmore at Coastal. Joey Hawkins going to take over for Keith Gutton at Missouri State. Steve Saban's taking over for Randy Mazey at West Virginia. And then Tracy Archuleta is going to take over for Mitch Hanna's at Indiana State. Any of those jump out at you, Fitzy?
Yeah, I think Steve Saban's he's kind of like that guy. You know what? It reminds me of a little bit of Rob Vaughn, where it's like when this guy was 24 years old, people were like, "Oh, this guy's a no-brainer. He's a can't miss." Like that young guy that everyone knew was just a dude. And that's Steve Saban's, and he's gotten a great apprenticeship there under Mays, and he's got all the tools, when it comes to recruiting, and I think the personality, the charisma, the development, and just a genuinely good human. He checks all those boxes. He knows what it takes to win there. He's been a part of building that program into something pretty special, and it's a seamless transition, and I just think that one's just an easy one right there.
Yep. He's got Oklahoma State roots too, which I think is really cool. And I just like it with Mays retiring, it gave us all a chance to think about what West Virginia accomplished in baseball. And it's almost like you can't even believe it.
No.
All these first round not all these, but prominent first round picks, and host a regional and win a regional, and nearly they tied to win the Big 12 last year. It just felt like them going to the Big 12. You're like, gulp. You're like, oh, that doesn't sound like a good idea.
I mean, I thought, they were so irrelevant. It's a Big East program, right? I mean, and it's like, what hope was there? You're going to the Big 12. I thought it was going to be an utter disaster. And the fact that, Mazey and Saban's by his side for a lot of it, I mean, turn that program into what it became. You go up there I was up there for a regular season game against UCF, that series this year, and the place was rocking, man. It was standing room only, and it was, kind of crappy weather, and it was packed, and it was special what they've built up there. And I was there in Chapel Hill for the Super Regional this year, and they had their share of obviously people come down there too, and I remember at the regional Wake Forest, their fans travel, they really care. And it's a neat program, look forward to seeing kind of the next era for them.
Yep. Joe, any of those legacy programs jump out at you?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go a little bit off the board here. I think the one that is probably least flashy is the one I'm interested in. That's Tracy Archuleta taking over at Indiana State. I think he has a couple things working for him, and I think he himself is an intriguing head coach. I think what he has working for them is obviously Mitch Hanna's and his staff have given that program a pretty high floor, at least to start. They're going to have a little bit of a running start in a way that a lot of other coaches taking over in places won't. But I'm just kind of a big believer in, especially when you have coaches moving from lower levels, and Southern Indiana did move up to D1, but for the most part, that was a Division II program for most of Tracy Archuleta's 16 years there. And I just kind of think that winners win, and coaches that have won at every place they've been, I think that's kind of an underrated deal. I think we tend to focus, understandably, and I'm not saying there's nothing to this, we tend to focus on, well, who is he coached under, and what tree is he on, and does he know this region, and does he, all these different things that all matter. But to me, I mostly just want to look at has the dude won where he's been? And Tracy Archuleta is a guy who won 2 Division II national titles at Southern Indiana, leading the Screagles to some high highs there. And so, it's a high bar to clear, right? Is he going to do what Mitch Hanna's did the last 5 to 6 years? Probably not, just if you had to bet one way or the other. But I think the other thing going for them too is that the Missouri Valley Conference, and this hurts my heart a little bit as someone who's covered a lot of Valley baseball, is starting to get a little hollowed out, right? I mean, you lose DBU, and that's okay. That's one thing, because they were always kind of a weird fit, but now Missouri State's on the way out, and that's kind of a legacy program. And then you go back 10, 12 years, and you lost Creighton, and you lost Wichita State. And so the positive for that for Indiana State is you've got a real opportunity to just be in another stratosphere in terms of interest and investment in baseball in that league, in a way that's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah,
love it. It's the Screagles, Joe. That's a good pull right there.
Yeah, the Screaming Eagles, colloquially known as the Screagles.
Yes. Oh wow, Joe is just dropping 4-syllable words like it's his job tonight. The Kendall, any of the legacy changes?
Yeah, real quick. By the way, can any of you name who the coach before Randy Mazie was at West Virginia?
Van Zandt.
Greg Van Zandt. Greg Van Zandt. Yeah. So by the way, there is there's an anti-Greg Van Zandt website that actually someone is still up.
Ooh.
If they find anything bad about Greg Van Zandt, they're putting it on this website. So,
Good God, move on there, Chach.
He hasn't been a coach since like 2010, 2011.
Yeah,
I know what I'm going to Google in the background here. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
Go for it.
Playing shuffleboard in Florida.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like there's like a random Twitter link on there from like somebody that criticized him on Twitter like 6 months ago. But anyways,
URL is GVZ sucks. That's actually what it is. Yeah.
That website should come with free therapy sessions. Like we got to really move on.
What did the man do to you? I think Coastal Carolina for me is really interesting. I mean, Gary Gilmore took over that program in 1996. That is a very long time to be the head coach of Coastal Carolina. So Kevin Schnall, we talked about UCF earlier. He was there at one point. He's spent the last 11, 12 seasons at Coastal. So, I mean, I think we all know and think that Kevin Schnall is a really good assistant coach. But he takes over for a legend. It's not easy to follow a legend. And so I just think the intriguing nature of him taking over that program without Gary Gilmore around is just really interesting to me. Can he continue the success they had? Can he continue to bring in the type of player that they consistently brought in at Coastal Carolina? I mean, if you look at their team last year, it was richly talented. And so can he continue that tradition? That'll be the big question for me.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, certainly he knows, to your point, Kendall, he's seen he
knows the formula.
Yeah, he knows the formula. That's perfectly said. Hey, just to wrap this category up, Ty McDevitt's interesting, very young guy and seems like a really sharp dude. It's interesting because Minnesota has struggled recently, and that's not it's a bummer, right? Because the John Anderson era at Minnesota has been really just awesome. And at the end, it just never recovered from the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And as college baseball changed, Minnesota baseball struggled with those changes. And so Ty McDevitt seems really sharp. But, he was one of the assistants in 2018 when they hosted a regional and won that regional. They just ran into that Oregon State buzzsaw in the Supers. And, I don't think anybody was beating them. And so, that one, that's going to, like you said, Joe, I think the word parochial, that kind of feels that way. Missouri State's interesting. This is cool. As I did homework on Joey Hawkins, he's the third coach in program history. Wild. Isn't that awesome? And he was a senior shortstop on the 2015 team. That was actually a national seed. They were a top 8 national seed. They won 49 games. I believe they didn't get to host the super regional because of the AA team, Fitzy, right?
They played at Arkansas. I was at that super, and it was.
Was that the rain drama?
No,
this was Matt Hall.
Matt Hall doing the whole deal. I don't know that he didn't flip him off, but he very much incited the crowd after winning the first game, and then they did not win the series, but it was a great series. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. And they had 2 really good arms then. Yeah. So anyway, Missouri State, just a cool program. They went to Omaha in 2003. Mm-hmm. They went to super regionals a couple other times, 2015 and 2017, I believe. They played at Arkansas for a super. They played at TCU for a super. So yeah, that's good for Joey Hawkins. I think that's a great hire. Yeah. So the next category is the of interest ones. And let me read these guys off, and then Fitzy, you can just grab one. So UTA, Kendall just mentioned Clay Van Hook's going to Houston as an assistant coach. Mike Trapasso is getting promoted there, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. Oklahoma State roots. He had been an assistant at Georgia Tech. He had been the head coach at Hawaii for many years. And Trapp is just one of the most wonderful people in our sport. Logan Stout is going to University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. And, that's a white male who's going to be the head coach at an HBCU, which is super cool. And he's like, Logan Stout's not even like your traditional college coach. He's really been, he's an entrepreneur of great acclaim, and he had an incredible travel ball program, the Dallas Patriots, Coach Josh Bell and AJ Minter and Trevor Story. I just think it's really cool. Like it just seems like a really unique and cool hire.
Very outside the box. That would be probably the most outside the box hire of this whole cycle.
100%. Yeah, and I think it's super. Like I'm just pumped about that one. Mike Silva is leaving Nichols and going to Arkansas State, taking over for Tommy Raffo. Carl Kuhn is going to take over for Mark McMillan at Charleston Southern. Brett Herring is going to take over at Nichols. He's coming over from LSU. He'd been at BYU. Reed Peters taking over at Pacific is very interesting. And then Mike McGuire is leaving USC Upstate and taking over at Winthrop. And he's got history there. Fitzy, any of those float your boat?
Yeah, and I wanted to start with that last one you mentioned. I remember hearing about, I was talking to some Winthrop people during conference tournament week, and they were saying, "Oh, who are we going to hire?" And McGuire was kind of the obvious name, and I was like, "I don't know, like that seems like a reach." I know that he's got history there, but I mean, like he's got it kind of rolling at Upstate. I was skeptical that he would leave. I mean, I think it's maybe a little bit easier to win at Upstate. I mean, given what he had built there, but they got him. They got him to come back, and I think it's a boon for them. I think he's a really good coach. I mean, you look at the talent they've had come through there, and the talent that they've developed there. It's pretty impressive. And again, when Winthrop was in its heyday, the kind of Daniel Cart era, if you will, back in the
Kevin Slowey era.
Kevin Slowey, absolutely. I'm more of a Daniel Cart guy, Cape Cod League superstar. But yeah, Kevin Slowey, more notably, I suppose.
Two-party system.
Yes, indeed. But mid 2000s there, 05-ish, 06, he was kind of one of the architects there with Coach Hudak, and so he knows how to win there. There's some stuff you can work with. I mean, the setting at Winthrop is pretty. It needs some updating, but I mean, it's an intriguing job. He hadn't really been relevant in quite some time, frankly, and so let's see if he can bring him back. I think that's a neat hire.
Yeah, the thing I think is really impressive about Coach McGuire is the fact that if you look at USC Upstate's history, they went the 12 years before he was hired there. They won more than 32 games one time. The other seasons were less than 30 wins. The last 4 years, there were 36 wins, 38 wins, 35, and 37. That's just an exceptional job done by him.
And Winthrop has the largest batter's eye in baseball
in America.
Like it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
They've got a good facility too, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, isn't their facility in general pretty nice?
It's for what they are. I think it's like the size of the operation. It's I mean, it can use
kind of college or Charleston-esque.
Yeah, bigger than that, but it's in that mold. I mean, it's kind of just it's pretty. It's a nice setting and the decent facilities that pour a little more resources in there. And it's been a while, granted, since I've been there, but absolutely, I think it's intriguing.
Joe, this next group, any jobs jump out? Any changes jump out?
Yeah, first off, I would like to throw in, I hear your Daniel Cart and Kevin Slowey. I will raise you an Alex Wilson while we're here.
Oh, yeah. Future Aggie. And
that's right. He was,
Sox.
transfer portal before it was cool.
That's right.
I think, thank you. Mike Silva must be, and like, God bless him, like kind of just a guy who has just decided that he has turned the video game difficulty sliders all the way up, that he was the coach at Nichols, which is like, that's a tough job, man. And like, they had dudes, I mean, I covered their regional when they were in Tuscaloosa 2 years ago. And it wasn't just Jacob Myers. Like, they had talented dudes in that roster. It's like, how did he get these guys to Nichols? Like, no disrespect, but that's just a program.
Sounds like a lot of disrest to me.
I mean, I guess there is some disrespect there, but like, hey, look, man, I went.
Joe, I will say this. I believe I told someone where I had somebody call me, like another coach, and was like, hey, why in the hell would Mike Silva go to Arkansas State? I said, hey, dude, have you ever been in Thibodaux, Louisiana? Because if you can win at Nicholls State, you can damn sure win in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
That's Kendall at D1Baseball.com. you can find him on
By
Twitter
the way, I love
Kendall
Tim
Rogers.
The food is incredible. So
the traffic on I-10 to try to get to Kendall's house with pitchforks and torches is here's
the thing, dude. Here's the thing, bro. I'm from East Texas. Like, I'm not going to pump up like little small deep East Texas towns. So, like, I feel like Louisianans can allow me to be honest about Thibodeau.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But moral of the story, like that was like I went to a Southland school, at the time at Sam Houston.
Yeah.
Like and Nichols was just an also ran Southland program, and he really turned that around pretty quickly. And Arkansas State's tough too, right? I mean, Tommy Raffo came in with a lot of acclaim, right? I mean, like Ron Polk coaching
Polky,
tree.
yeah.
I mean, that's not nothing, and it was just tough going. And now they're in an extremely tough version of the Sun Belt. And so like it's not just that there's not a lot of history there, it's also that you look around your conference and boy, like that's suddenly a gauntlet. So look, if there's a guy based on history that you feel like could get it done there, maybe it's this guy. Mike Silva's still a younger guy. Obviously the track record is what it is. It's good. But again, that he is playing with the difficulty sliders turned all the way up.
Yeah, the other thing too that seems promising about Arkansas State is the fact that when they went after him, one of the big pitches they made to him was that they were going to spend a lot of money on facilities and things like that. Now, I mean, the proof is in actual movement and getting that stuff done. But it seems like they finally like realized like, hey, in this league, like we're going to have to invest. If not, we're going to continue to be one of the bottom 2 or 3 programs in that conference. So they at least have gotten the memo, judging by the hire and judging by some of the things they've kind of promised facilities-wise.
They know what winning looks like, right? Don't they have a kind of a sneaky good football tradition? Like a lot of those famous coaches like Hugh Freeze and Malzahn.
Ryan Harsin.
There. Yeah, like that's...
Isn't Butch Jones? Wasn't Butch Jones their coach too?
He is there. He's still their coach.
Oh, he's still there. Okay.
Yep.
Gotta love it.
They might have a good team this fall. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, they
How about that little Arkansas State football breakdown for you? How about that?
Right. That's right.
Unbelievable.
You're welcome, listeners.
Go Red Wolves. The Kendall, any jump out from you in this category?
Trap. I'll go with Mike Trapasso. I was talking to him the other day actually when he got that job there. He was at a really difficult job in Hawaii. Obviously, his tenure there didn't end with some great results, but he had some really solid years there. He's an Oklahoma State background guy. He knows the Metroplex really well. It sounds like UTA is one of those programs that in the scholarship era, when we're trying to figure out what schools are going to be able to give, it sounds like they're a school that's willing to invest a little bit, that's willing to get creative to help that program out. So, I think that's a neat hire. Like I think Trapp is a really solid coach, and I think Hawaii is a really difficult job.
I'm going to warn Trapasso now. The waves are not as good in Arlington.
I did tell him that the other day. I said, how is it going from Hawaii to South Dallas? He goes, well, it's a little hotter. So yeah, that's not the only thing.
Can we get him on the phone with Steve Rodriguez? Get a little bit of perspective here on how that move's going to go from Paradise to Texas.
I don't know. I think. Well, see, I've already been really mean about one city tonight, but I will say, Hawaii to Dallas is probably better than Malibu to Waco.
That's Kendall at D1Baseball.com.
Oh gosh! All these potential host sites for the D1 Baseball shareholders meeting: Waco out, Thibodeau out, Jonesboro out.
Have we even kicked out a cut and shoot? What the heck?
Yeah. They're still...
Well, as part of this pod, every single section we disgrace a city as a part of the process.
Cut and shoot. The facilities they were building for our meeting have been pushed back to 2026, unfortunately. One of these days we'll actually have our annual shareholders meeting at about time or whatever it's called.
Time to spare.
Let's
be respectful.
Yeah, your neighborhood bowling alley. I will say Reed Peters, I think, is interesting. He was really awesome at Delta College, which is in Stockton. I think that's a tough thing about Pacific. I mean, that's a very tough job. Obviously, Reed Peters, he's the twin brother of Rex, who was at UCLA. He played at UNLV. He's a Cherry Creek guy, which is an incredible, high school program. Mark Johnson there is retiring. So anyway, I think if anybody could do it at Pacific, that's a really neat hire for those guys. Let me read off the rest of the field to you all, and then you guys can chime in if there's any that jump out. So Alcorn State has hired Carlton Hardy. He spent 19 seasons at Savannah State. Chris Marks is going to go back to Campbell to take over for Justin Hare, which is really cool. Jordan Banfield goes from Oakland, where he did an excellent job, to Cal State Bakersfield. Scott Loizo he had just left. I think he was at Southern New Hampshire, went to Penn State. You talk to Mike Gambino, he'll tell you Scott Loizo and actually Corey Mascara say the same thing. He's an excellent coach. He's going to take over for Jason King at Dayton. Remember, Jason King is now the hitting coach at Vandy. Delaware State is still open. J.P. Blandon has retired after 25 years. Walt Jones is taking over at Eastern Kentucky, and he's cool. He's got a cool background. He was involved with PBR Louisiana. He was at Chipola. Yep. He also played college football. Here's one, Joe. Lance Berkman, no longer the skipper at Houston Christian. Clay Vanderlaan, he was the assistant. He's a Houston native and also played college baseball and football. At Longwood, go Lancers, go Wood. Ray No takes over. He's an Ohio guy, was at VMI and IMG. Matt Spatafora is taking over for Rob McCoy at Niagara. Rob McCoy is going to William & Mary. And Coach Spatafora was at Niagara for 13 years. He's from Toronto, so perfect fit. Brian Nelson is the interim coach at Oakland because Jordan Banfield left. Tyler Latore, I don't know him. He was at Westmont, and they won the NAIA national title. He's taken over at Pepperdine. That's a program that's won a national championship. Chris Ramirez takes over at Southern Indiana. Matt Vanderberg takes over at Stephen F. Austin. He spent 16 years at West Texas A&M. Kind of your model that you mentioned earlier, Joe. Russell Triplett takes over at the Citadel for Tully Skull. He spent 14 years as the skipper at Newberry College. He played, I didn't know this, Fitzy, but Russell Triplett played shortstop at Clemson like in the heyday, Khalil Green, all that time. Cody Ellis gets promoted at UNC Greensboro. He had been, he had been the interim there. Kane Sweeney is going to take over. That's another promotion. He played at Morehead State, I think, for Mike McGuire. He takes over at USC Upstate. Nate Rasmussen, another promotion. He takes over for Eddie Smith at UVU. Sean Thompson, who played at VCU, is going to take over there for Bradley LaCroix. And he's got a really interesting background. He coached Trey Dombrowski at Monmouth, who was incredible. He was also the winning pitcher as a true freshman when VCU beat DBU to win the 2015 regional. #research. Mentioned Rob McCoy leaving Niagara. He was there 16 years, going to William & Mary. And then Trevor Sharpie, that's a promotion. He's taking over at Youngstown State. How about this? He's from Orange County, California. He pitched at Tennessee, Saddleback in Nevada, and now he's the head coach at Youngstown.
Yeah, I was going to interject here. Joe will probably know this answer because he knows everything. But Sean Thompson is 28 years old, the new head coach at VCU. He is 28. Joe, that's got to be the youngest coach in college baseball, right?
If it's pretty doggone close. Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
That's incredible. I mean, think about a 28-year-old taking over that. I mean, that is a perennial postseason caliber program, and a 28-year-old's running that thing. So a lot of respect for Sean Thompson there in Richmond.
And I'll continue to just throw back random games that I was at that 2015 regional where he beat DBU. I was at that one. It's also, I think, Augie Garrido's last. Wasn't that Augie's last?
Yeah, Texas was in that regional.
Was that the region where they had the fish in the outfield? Was
That's
that
right.
that year?
Exactly. That's how much rain they got. Anyway, good college pitcher. But I'll tell you what, I hear a lot of great things about him as a coach.
Awesome.
And certainly Bradley at that regional this year, I covered in Greenville, where VCU won a game down there to start the weekend, and Bradley was just raving about Sean Thompson, the job that he's done remaking their pitching staff. He sounds like a real rising star, and if you look at their pitching numbers and just the development of that staff, it's loud. So young, but sounds like he's got a very bright future and a talented guy.
How about the other head coaches in that regional, Fitzy? So you got Heath was for DBU, obviously. Augie Garrido of Texas, Pat Casey of Oregon State was in that regional.
Yeah, how about that?
That's a nice.
No pressure, guys.
And VCU won it. And VCU won the regional and went to play at Miami that year, right? Do I have that right?
Yep. Gosh, if they didn't make a base running mistake early in that super regional game, I remember VCU had two really good relievers, and man, they had Miami sweating, and then they just bungled a base running play.
Who was like the superstar on that VCU team, Fit?
Vimeo Machine, right?
Well, there you go. Yeah, that's a good pull.
Wow, that's a good pull.
Probably their best player. Well done, Joe.
I think he was.
Wow.
I think he was a big
Damn.
leaguer at some point too.
Was he?
Was he the shortstop?
I'm just going to start calling you Encyclopedia Joe.
I might just have had a good day. I took a nap earlier, so like maybe I'm just a little more refreshed than I would
Hashtag
normally be.
offseason.
Yes, well
That's right.
done.
Fitt plays golf all day, travels the world. Me and Runes, we do whatever. Then you sleep.
Yes,
Yeah, just
well
took a
done.
nap.
Gentlemen, let's wrap it there. That's like a perfect size podcast right there.
Yeah.
We've covered the coaching changes there. Joe gets phrase of the day, MVP effort. Joe, I know that's been communicated. Words like parochial, doddering, screagles. I thought hollowed out was a very underrated play. It's a very
that's pretty good.
descriptive phrase, turn of phrase. And I think, Joe, you dropped a colloquially on us.
Yeah, it's a
colloquially.
And you mistakenly called it a 4-syllable word, Ruse. I think that's 5. I think it's 5
At least
syllables.
5. Colloquial.
It is 5. Yeah.
Well done.
You.
Big time.
Joe, hats off. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well
Thank
done.
you, gentlemen.
I will say this: Joe and Mark for SEC Extra for Highway to Hoover did an awesome podcast with our favorite listener, Chris from Louisville, the great Chris Burke, that I listened to today while driving. That was really fun. And then if you're like me, where you really haven't seen summer baseball, there's a ton of great stuff on the site right now. SEC Extra's got a lot of season reviews that Joe and Mark are doing that are kind of like a look back and a preview of next year's roster for the SEC programs. Fitzy and Seif and all you guys have a bunch of Cape. What would we call those? Like
prospect reports from we're doing all 10 teams, hitters and pitchers individually, kind of stringing those out. I don't know if you guys have noticed, there's not a lot of baseball going on, college baseball in August. So we're stringing those out a little bit throughout the month of August. We got some Patrick Ebert North Woods League sprinkled in. We got more good stuff on the way. It is top 100 programs year. Transfer portal rankings are coming. It is a top 100 programs year. We do those every other year, and we're due. Yep. So that'll be coming up.
Any complaints on that, Aaron at D1Baseball.com?
That's right. Hit me, baby.
Send those to Kendall in Thibodaux, Louisiana, please. So, gentlemen, this was great. We've been busy. We have not podcasted much lately, but the fall, people are starting school now, so we will be getting in rhythm now. And the Fitzy Fall Tour is sure to. What is your earliest fall jaunt, Fitzy? It's got to be mid-September, right?
Yeah, I usually start in the Northeast in mid-September because they start a little earlier up there. So I haven't mapped it out yet, but that's usually where I start.
Love it. Very cool. Fun time of the year in college baseball. The fall, it's that we're turning the page. We're getting ready for the new season. Very good stuff. So that's it. Everybody have a great week, and we will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.